Welcome to the latest edition of the Omni Talk Spotlight series, the series that highlights the people, the companies, and the technologies that are shaping the future of retail. I'm your host, Chris Walton.
And I'm Mezzenga.
And today we are turning our attention to the always present topic of data in retailing. Data, Ann.
Yes.
I know, right? Every pundit kept saying it at NRF, but no one really had any advice for how to actually go about doing it the right way.
No, they had some suggestions.
Yes, a few suggestions, a few like high level suggestions,
yes.
I would say. But so in that regard, today we are turning our spotlight on a true expert on the subject, particularly as it relates to data and the topic of identity resolution. And perhaps the man with the best alliterative name in the history of our show, something I'm quite proud of, Bill Bruno, the CEO of Celebrus. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. And I think, unfortunately, my real name will kill the alliteration because it's very Italian, and my real name is Garino, so that ruins the alliteration.
Wait, what's the backstory there? Your real name's Garino. Your real last name's Garino?
No, my last name is Bruno, but my legal name is Garino. And the main reason it's Italian.
Garino Bruno. Wow, that's super Italian.
Oh, it is, and the middle name's Luigi. So we could really go down a rabbit hole here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you're in Chicago. I got to ask too, because this has some personal anecdotes to me too, but you're in Chicago. Are you full like South Side Italian Chicago, or like what's going on here?
Yes, sir. Grew up on the South Side of Chicago. Grandfather lived in the Bridgeport neighborhood of Chicago. So that's where I was born and raised, an avid Sox fan, all of the things that come with that.
Oh my God. Yeah. You're talking to a Giudice, who was my grandfather's a Giudice from that part of the world too. From that neighborhood, literally. Cool. So yeah, that's crazy. Wow.
Is that why he got into the selling of the reselling of the snacks that we were talking about the other day on the Fast Five?
Yeah. It probably started from how those Italians used to make money back in the day.
Yep. Little did you know that this talk about data and retail would bring all of that together for you.
Right. Yeah. Well, Bill, I had an Italian beef sandwich. I think I'd have the whole thing covered. But
well, Bill, why don't we start off by giving us a little more background, not specifically on your Italian Chicago heritage, but about you and about Celebrus.
Sure, absolutely. So Celebrus makes offers that people can't refuse. No, so Celebrus as a platform. So I've been with Celebrus for about 4 years, but I've worked with the platform for probably about 20, going back to my consulting days. And what we do is something it sounds very simple. It ends up being very complex at the end of the day, but we have two platforms. We've got one for consumer context and one for fraud. On the consumer context side, it's trying to help basically build positive experience for consumers, which in the end of the day, if those go well, generate more revenue for businesses, right? Tracking how you interact with websites, mobile devices, things like that, and trying to help you with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish or purchase. On the fraud side, it's pretty much the exact opposite, but a lot of it is similar data. It's more about protecting the consumer in that world. So it's taking all of that data to then make sure that it's actually you before that purchase happens, or if somebody's gotten access to your account or your payment information or one of your devices, giving you and the brand a fighting chance of being able to say that's not you and try to stop that from happening, and all the annoying things that happen after that if somebody, gets access to your credit card, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for the purposes of today, we called you or asked you to come on the show really to talk about the former in that specifically. So, and I mentioned it before, but we wanted to center today's topic around data and the idea of identity resolution. But so what do we mean when we say that phrase, identity resolution? Can you set the guardrails for the audience on that phrase?
Yeah, because it can get really confusing, right? Kind of like when you're at NRF and everybody talks about data, but everybody's definition of what that is probably something different, right?
Right.
With identity resolution, in the real world, we can look at each other, you could see IDs and you can confirm who someone is, right? You go through an airport, you can scan, people's fingerprints and eyes, who they are. When you start talking about digital, you don't have that opportunity. It'd be quite creepy if somebody came up on the screen every time you tried to make a purchase and they're trying to scan your eyes, right? So it's more about understanding and trying to remember who someone is, whether they're anonymous or logged in or somewhere in between, to be able to better understand perhaps their previous interactions with you as a company, their previous purchases, and to be able to use that in the moment to try to direct somebody down a path that perhaps they started previously, or to cross-sell them or upsell them on additional products based upon things they've purchased from you before. And at the heart of all of that, it's basically just trying to identify who your consumer is on that device in that moment.
So, Bill, what happens then when we're talking about identity resolution and retailing in 2023? Like, explain a little bit more, like what retailers are able to do with that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think it's probably best to describe it as what retailers aren't able to do anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
So, I think it's been really interesting over the last couple of years because this topic has kind of gone a lot of different directions, and it's largely been forced by some of the bigger organizations that have made decisions. So like Apple, as an example, with their intelligent tracking prevention, browsers like Mozilla with their total cookie protection.
Right.
Basically, a lot of the third-party data sharing environment in terms of how advertising used to really operate. And so when you came from a website or you had seen ads before, you could kind of piece together the journey. So I would know that you looked at that pair of shoes, or I would know that you saw an ad for golf clothes before you came to the site, right? And all of that has kind of fallen apart with all of these new regulations. The reliance on that data sharing is gone. And so the reason why identity resolution or digital identity, or however you want to phrase it, has become so important is because it really focuses on what brands can do in the channels that they own and control. So the stores, the websites, the mobile apps, the call centers, et cetera, and how they best bring that together, knowing that a lot of that data sharing is gone, to still try to deliver that expected experience from a consumer perspective. And that it gets even worse or even more complicated for marketers when you factor in all the privacy legislation, particularly here in the US, because where everybody else is kind of aligned on a similar policy like GDPR, in the States, it varies based on the state you're in. And that's really difficult for brands. It's really difficult for consumers, and it's causing probably more confusion than it is helping.
Right.
So, Bill, expanding on what Ann was asking you too, I'm curious. Then, we've heard a lot, on our show, we've talked about those topics a lot. That the changes really that we've seen in the last few years around identifying customers for retailers. But what are some of the keys that help companies get around those issues? Like, what are some of the key things that really aid in identity resolution in this day and age?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think there's a few building blocks that we like to talk to customers about.
Okay.
First and foremost, if you're thinking about your own channels, it's how you set a first party cookie or identifier versus a third party, because third party is what has been blocked and restricted. The second is, how do you cast a wide net? Because they can identify us in many ways, right? It could be our login, it could be a phone number, it could be an email address. And so there's the concepts of an identity graph, right? Having an identity graph that houses all of these different identifiers, so that if you're on a device and you use one of those identifiers, they could quickly link it back to your overall profile, right, of the data that they've collected. And then I think the final, or the two final building blocks to consider is, one is how to get through some of the challenges. So a lot of the existing restrictions, if you're using some of the older ways of trying to do this, are blocked. So if you go from one web domain to another, let's say you go from Amazon.com to smile.amazon.com as an example,
right?
You're two different people. They can't share that information, even though it's the same domain. So you have to think through how you're going to manage that, because if you're losing the identity through the web, which has become extremely fragmented to that point, you've got marketing landing pages, you've got specific campaign landing pages, then you're already fighting a losing battle. And then the final bit would be, if you can solve for all of that, how do you package up a profile about that user in that moment to use it? Whether you're using it in your channels or whether you're using it to funnel to Hulu for your advertising buys, right? And to update segments and purchase information and personas and things like that.
And how do you at Celebrus do all that then? Like, what's all involved there?
Yeah, so see, this is where I normally, when I'm doing these things, I try to avoid the sales pitch. So I'll keep this one very simple and say that everything I just mentioned, we offer and solve for. So Celebrus as a platform for marketers is a first party solution that they own and control. They don't send data to us.
Okay.
We've got, I think, 17 patents now, something to that effect, in terms of how we manage identity, how we provide the ability to persist that across the domains and channels. We offer a full featured identity graph built into the product. You don't have to pay for it. It just comes with it. And we offer the ability to build those profiles and connect it to any system you want. So for retailers, that are using Salesforce, that are maybe using Snowflake or Teradata or Pegasystems or Adobe, or all these platforms that they've got out there that largely are starved for better data, we're the ones that come and put the food on the plate for them, right? And by way of better data, more consistent information, and kind of solving that identity problem so that those solutions can do what they're supposed to do and deliver positive results for the brands.
One thing I want to ask you too, Bill, is like, there's been a lot of talk, and I've been hearing a lot about like the real-time approach to this problem versus
Yep.
say after, I don't know, better way to put it than an after the fact approach to the problem. And particularly in personalization, like there's the traditional, if I bought this, then you might want to buy this.
Yep.
But what you're talking about here fundamentally allows retailers to capitalize on that personalization effort in a much different way, right? And so like, can you expand upon that? Because I really want to understand what's involved, what retailers need to know to take that more real-time approach to their personalization efforts.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great question, right? I mean, I think words like real time have almost become a misnomer because everybody says they're real time, right? So you go through an RFP pitch as a brand, you're going to hear the same thing from everyone, right? And so it's kind of like peeling back the onion. You've got to get down into a few layers to kind of understand what that actually means. And for a lot of technology that retailers are using today, it means you're getting portions or very small pictures of data available in the moment. But if you need any of the valuable stuff, like remembering the profile or building that identity, it's going to happen later. And consumers don't have patience for that, right? I mean, think about how quickly you can make a purchase right now. I mean, I just walked out of one of those Amazon Go stores earlier and didn't even have to stop, right? It just suddenly just charges you for everything. So you've got this split-second attention span. You're jumping through your mobile app. You know what you're trying to do. They've got that very small window to intervene with you. So if you're dealing with solutions that are going to give you something in minutes, let alone hours or days, then it's not the right solution for your business. And the examples existed for a long time, right? You buy a pair of shoes as an example, and that same pair follows you for like 2 days. Even though you already bought it.
Maybe longer, right?
Maybe longer. And the whole reason that is because the data that's coming from their websites and mobile apps is only updating at best 24 to 48 hours later. And then that has to cycle through the whole system before it actually updates that you purchased those shoes, right?
That just happened to me, actually.
Yeah.
Honestly, with an Adidas shirt I bought. No joke.
Surprise.
Yeah, I know, right? Shocking. But no, I literally did. I'm like, why am I seeing this? Because like ESPN, I go on ESPN, it shows me the shirts I've just bought. It's crazy every time, but sorry, no.
It's a good anecdote because it's waste, right? I mean, advertising and marketing is hard enough as it is. There's so many brands and so many ways to interact with a brand to try to keep up with it. But those are the types of things when we get engaged with customers, it's just as much about the value as it is, in terms of building those experiences, as it is about suppressing things. Right? How are you going to stop wasting money showing me something that I already bought? Show me the next thing I should buy.
Yeah, the waste must just be immense. I mean, I think about, like you said, 48 hours of ads that are following me around. That's like,
it's got to be incredible.
I know.
When you get down to it.
I know.
I mean, depending on the size of the retailer, it can be massive, right? I mean, the marketing and advertising budgets are generally larger than most R&D budgets in a business. And, for one customer that we just worked with not too long ago, they did some sort of paid media spend analysis and optimization, and they cut their spend by about 15%. There was millions of dollars for them in savings by just speeding it up.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit more, and about getting retailers and brands onboarded with Celebrus, and how, like, what does that process look like, Bill? And I imagine it sounds like in a relatively short amount of time, they're able to see a return on the investment here. If, if they're cutting back spend significantly, or they're able to because of this technology.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, we focus on the platform paying for itself in the first 90 days, which a lot of vendors say, but we actually do try to deliver on that. Right. And, in terms of deploying Celebrus, we can host it for them. They can host it in their environment. It's not uncommon if we're hosting it to have a client up and running within a few days of signature, and starting to capture data and starting to use it for specific use cases. So that's why it can be quite quick for consumers. And we have sort of very focused versions of our product. So for example, retailers that are using Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which a lot of them are, if they just want to drive good first party identity and attributes into the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. We launched an engineered integration with Salesforce that we worked on with them for about 14 months that we launched about a month ago. And that implementation spins up in hours if they sign up, and data is flowing into their marketing cloud pretty much immediately from the time they sign up. So they can start to use it to activate these campaigns.
What's most surprising that retailers are finding right away? I mean, I'm so curious, like once they start seeing that data come in, what changes are they able to make quickly? Like what other anecdotes do you have from your experience with the brands you worked with?
I think the first thing that retailers notice with our platform when they deploy it is, when you go to a website and you go to a retailer website, they're the most innovative when it comes to building out experiences. Try before you buy. You saving your cart, having your closet there of the clothes you've already purchased. All the sort of nuanced new tech usually shows up in retail first for anything for digital experiences, right? But they're extremely difficult to track interactions within. And the technologies that they're usually using require all kinds of coding and tagging to do that. Whereas Celebrus doesn't. We're tag free. So you deploy our technology and every interaction is captured on day one. So if you're a retailer and you just want to know, somebody comes in and they self-select into something, and we want to trigger a campaign off of that, but they haven't been able to do it because they haven't been able to code for it or build that up, or 6 to 12 months from now, they come up with a great idea and they hear, well, we didn't tag for that data. We don't have that information. That all goes away with Celebrus. And so the first realization for retailers is that they have way more data at their fingertips than they could ever want in that moment, but that it's there when they come up with something cool that they want to do, or a new use case that they want to trigger for their consumers.
It's funny you said that, because I was going to ask you next. I was curious about the possible here too. So we talked about, like, you can speed up your personalization efforts, like the Adidas example I gave.
Yeah.
What else can you do with your personalization efforts that maybe haven't been tried before, or are an untapped opportunity for retailers when you start to think about it? What are some examples that you can share in that regard? I'm curious, because this is kind of fascinating.
There's a few things I'll probably call attention to. I think one is, if you're trying to change something on the website or the mobile app, it's really difficult to get that change delivered before the person moves on. They call it kind of the last mile of A/B or multivariate testing. So Celebrus can deliver the content for you. So if you've got something you want to do and you have an experience you're watching for, maybe it's you want to see people that have been to the site 3 times in the last 2 weeks and haven't made a purchase, and you want to prompt them with a coupon or something simple like that. You can set those rules in Celebrus to where it'll do it for you, and it'll measure whether or not it's used and interacted with, so on and so forth. For retailers that have brick and mortar, you probably want to know, if I'm on the website and I'm looking at something, you might want to know if I was in the store and purchased something related to that item. So being able to pull in from other internal systems, from other point of sale systems, or et cetera, to complete the profile of an individual can be really valuable. And then I'd say the third thing that comes through is all of this, as you're packaging it up, can be used to build some really segmented campaigns that perhaps right now they're going to larger groups of people because they're finding it difficult to kind of drill down deeper. But if you have the level of data that we provide, you can get pretty granular. And if you want to, you could get to one-to-one. And that is, I think, an extremely powerful thing, because if you read any study from Forrester or Gartner, you kind of get 2 things, right? One is consumers want you to respect their privacy or their wishes with data. But then on the flip side of that, they also want a personalized experience, and they want to know that you care about them. So to fight that, that's where Celebrus, that's where we spend most of our time, is helping brands do that.
Right. And that's the holy grail to that one-to-one. But you got my mind going now in the future. So like, what's next? Like, what's kind of, if that's the here and now, like, what's next? What's on the horizon of where things are going to get to that point?
So we took a step. I'm glad you asked that, because we took a step into the what's next. You've probably seen a million articles, given what you guys do on a daily basis, around cookieless solutions and what do you do with the death of cookies? There's all that clickbait stuff that they throw out there, right? So we decided to actually deliver on that. So people are opting out, right? You go in, you block cookies, or you don't accept cookies, or you're on a browser that restricts it for you. When that happens, the lights go out, right? So for a brand, they're not able to collect any data. They're not able to know who you are. And they're not able, more importantly, to kind of self-select you into any of these experiences. So we thought to ourselves, we've got clients that were coming to us saying 30, 40, 50% of people, depending on the market they're in, were opting out.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So we designed a cookieless solution. It's called CX Vault. And basically what it does, if you go to a website and you opt out, two things happen. We have a machine learning algorithm that downloads onto the browser of that individual for that domain. And there's a set of rules that go with that machine learning. And basically it generates signals of interest based on the context or the content you're viewing or the products you're viewing. And you can use those signals to then trigger rules that change the experience. It never collects data. It doesn't set a cookie. They'll never know who you are. The data is never shared, and it's owned completely by the consumer. But it gives the brands a fighting chance when the lights are out to turn a few of the lights on to help them navigate through the house.
So basically I'm unknown. So if I paraphrase what you just said, so I show up on the retailer's website, I'm unknown to them at that time.
Yep.
But then the machine learning that goes on in the background can then still personalize an experience to me in real time, using that phrase again, that is still somewhat tailored to knowing me through the data and information that you can still glean from that person's behavior on the website. Am I saying that the right way? Am I leaving any key points? Super cool.
No, you nailed it. And I think go ahead.
What if their browser history is cleared? Like, are they still, does that impact the amount of data that you're able to collect about them?
So because we're never collecting data, it doesn't ultimately matter, right? If they clear their browser and everything, a new vault will be created next time they come back, right? And so is it a perfect science? Absolutely not. But what it allows you to do is, let's say we're all sharing data with a brand and they realize that a certain ad or a certain experience works. Well, then they can use that rule and apply it to people that are opted out. They'll just never know it's us, right? They'll never know who we are. They're not collecting any data, but it basically just gives them a fighting chance when right now the lights go out across all other technologies. So we were pretty thrilled to get that patented and roll that out.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's observing behavior through multiple sessions that are all all anonymous, but then can inform the future. And it never
leaves the consumer's browser, so the brand will never see any of that data.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Actually.
I know,
it's super cool to see. It's so super cool to see where this is all going,
especially as we go into this world. I mean, I've been talking to people who work at some of the biggest Nielsen and IRI and all these companies that have been trying to measure this data anonymously, really, only being able to segment it to demographics or zip codes or something like that, basic demographics. But shopping behavior and search behavior really now is the best way for us all to kind of get a sense of who each individual is within, to like dive deeper into the funnel within those demographics that we had before. So to be able to do that anonymously is something very profound, I think, and something that we've never seen in this.
It's something we've definitely never talked about with our audience. So this is why this is really cool. Well, Bill, any parting words there? Like anything that we haven't asked you that we should have, like that helps our listener get a real sense of all the dynamics at play here?
I think we've covered it all. I mean, obviously, Celebrus, the reason I'm here with Celebrus is to make people aware of the technology. It's been around a long time, right? And it's been historically based in the UK. We're publicly traded there, but the Brits are a little conservative in their marketing, so we're changing that to make people aware that there is actually a solution out there, and there are solutions out there that can help close the gaps that retailers are fighting today.
Well, Bill, we are so thankful that you took the time with us today. If people listening want to find out more about Celebrus, they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So they can check out Celebrus.com and they can find all kinds of information there. They can follow Celebrus Tech on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And they can hit me up if they can't find any of that. It's at Bill Bruno on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, that wraps us up. Thanks to Bill Bruno for sitting down with us today. And thanks to all of you listening out there. And as always, on behalf of us here at Omni Talk, be careful out there.
Woo!